On Sunday, December 6th, Armenians headed to the polls to vote in a critical referendum on a package of constitutional reforms. According to the Central Electoral Commission, just over 50% of the population took part in the vote, 50.77%. And the results of the vote were that 63.35% voted in favor of the new constitution, while 32.35% voted against the constitutional amendments. However, it's difficult to reconcile these numbers with reports from journalists and citizen observers who reported about countless electoral violations, vote rigging, ballot stuffing, suggesting that the outcome of the vote indeed didn't reflect the will of the people. CivilNet's crews that were working in Yerevan and in several regions of the country, including ordinary citizens, voters, kept calling our office to report about a number of electoral violations, sometimes from severe physical attacks to obstructing the work of journalists. And after 8 p.m. when the polls closed, that's when a lot of the violations actually did take place. We saw a number of districts where the electricity happened to be turned off, where tables were turned, where the commission presidents or chairmen or chairwomen, chairpeople were trying to postpone the actual count in order to encourage observers to leave the polling station. Aside from the very limited number of international observation missions, who were actually quite small in their delegations and capacity, there were about 1,000 citizen observers that was mobilized with Transparency International and a number of other organizations that were deployed to about 500 precincts, polling stations around the country. I spoke earlier today with Vahe Grigoryan. He is a human rights lawyer who was legal consultant for the Citizen Observation Mission, and he said that in those precincts where their observers were working, almost 95 to 97% of the time, the no vote was winning. Take a look.
In a couple of days, the final reports of observers will be published also, and there will be a clear pattern seen, a clear difference between the results in those precincts where there weren't observers, and at least independent observers, and in those precincts where there were observers, and which will show what was the real will of people. And this real will of people, as we could observe during all night yesterday, receiving results from precincts, was about that no was overweighting yes in most of the precincts by 2-3 times.
Arsen Kharadian, who was here on his own observation mission, he is from the Georgian-based Alik Media Group. He spoke to us about their own observation mission and how they had gone to different precincts in the north of the country, all the way to Yerevan. And he said, in his opinion, up until 4 or 5 p.m., from what they were seeing, most of the polling stations were calm. It was after that time when we saw a lot of physical attacks. Interestingly, we were seeing them right from the minute that the polls opened. But take a look at what Arsen had to say about his experience observing the referendum here in Armenia.
Coming from Georgia, actually, we started off right after the polling stations opened after 8 o'clock, and we started visiting smaller villages and some towns in Lori and in Aragazotan, the two main regions. Over 10 precincts, just our own mobile group, but our organization certified another 12 people to cover, and we pretty much were able to, at least with the help of some friends, to get some Americans and Georgians and others, expats who live in Georgia. Now, in the earlier side of the day, we didn't see really much. I mean, calm, relaxed environment. By the time we got to Yerevan, by 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m., of course, we started getting the phone calls, and we were at the Citizens Observation Mission with Transparency in other places, and we were trying to do it in the mobile way. But the real smaller issues appeared in the evening. The real worry on their side was right after they realized they're losing. They're losing big. I am personally certain that they have received pretty much 90% of the voters no. I cannot claim this because I don't have...
It's your perception of it, sure.
But from whatever information we were able to gather, it was pretty much clear the no is winning. And that no is not about constitutional amendments. It's not about the text of the Constitution. It's not about whether we
protest
vote in a parliamentary state or a presidential state. It's a no to the regime. And this is very clear. We've talked to a couple of dozen people in the streets. We've talked to pretty much everyone who we saw in the streets around the precincts and elsewhere. Now, that should be a warning sign for them. Because if they, I actually don't even know how much more should the people of the country say no, so they realize it's a no.
Earlier today, the Citizen Observation Mission that had worked around the clock on election day all the way to morning counting the votes held a press conference at the media center in Yerevan. They spoke about their impressions. One of the observers, organizers, said that this was probably the worst election that they had seen in terms of electoral violations. Here you can take a look at some of their impressions from the vote.
All in all, we say that due to the high number of electoral violations and crime, including intimidation of voters, falsification of protocols, and numerous reports on ballot box stuffing, the Citizen Observer Initiative and the European Platform for Democratic Elections believe that this referendum result do not reflect the free will of Armenian citizens and should not be considered to be legitimate.
Yesterday, I observed how those data, which is supposed to be analyzed, get distorted. I was visiting 6 polling stations, and in 3 of them I have found ballot box stuffing. It was very easy to deduct which way this dot was moved by this fraud on this diagram. And we see that it's quite a big difference. And without this ballot box stuffing, Armenia would be more united in their aspiration about anything, presidential election or constitutional changes. So I think, and I can prove it with statistical data and with yesterday's evidence, that people who do those stuff are breaking Armenia in 2 different countries with 2 different ways of thinking and ways of development.
Since Armenia's independence in 1991, this is the 3rd time that Armenian voters have gone to the polls to vote on constitutional reforms. This particular reform was, among other things, about shifting the form of governance in the country from a semi-presidential to a parliamentary system. As we said in earlier reports, regardless of what kind of governing system the country lives under, the people live under, the most important thing is that will this constitution be viewed as a legitimate document for the people and for the country moving forward? Does it reflect the will of the people? Time will tell as to how this new system will in fact be implemented, how it will impact the lives of ordinary citizens. But to give you an idea of what our cameras captured all day on December 6th during the vote, after the polls were closed and during the count, I'd like to show you a few of those images.
Դուք ինչ չեք կարող, ինչ փաստեր, ասում եմ, փաստը գնացեք ձեր մոտիկներին, հարցրեք ձեր։ Ցավը տանեմ, քուրիկ ջան, խան գարում եք։ Հա, նկարում է սարա, դե հասկացան, կարող ջան, այդքան ձեզի արա։
Ստորագրած է տեղը, պեչատը զարգած է։ Համ ստորագրած է, համ պեչատած է տեղը։ Հարցել ստեղ չէ։ Ես 67 տարեկան մարդ եմ։ Հասկացու։ Այստեղ են չէ դեմը ստորագրած։ Թող ընդեղ ստորագրեն։
Ընթացքում այդ բոլորը կներկայացնեն։ Խանգարում են։ Վերջ, խանգարում են։ Եկեք ասեք։ Խանգարում են գնաց։
Տեսախցիկի մեջ լցոլում կանեմ։ Եմի գրխանց ասում եք։
Դարքը սենսա որ։ Նեոկեանցը կարոջ էլի, նեոկեանցը։